Hello and welcome to Caregivers Stories podcast, where we discuss all types of dementia and hopefully share some caregiver stories along the way. My name is Kimberly Scott. I'm a part-time caregiver to my mother, who at the age of 65 was diagnosed with early onset dementia. And in 2019, I started Caregiver Stories to give caregivers a place to tell their story when they're ready, to continue to educate others about dementia. And number one important reason to me for this podcast is to get people talking and having a tough conversation about the what if your loved one is diagnosed with dementia, some sort of a dementia, then what? Do you have a plan? I wish my mom and I had had this tough conversation before she was diagnosed. If you want to share your story or you have knowledge about dementia and want to be a guest on Caregiver Stories podcast, please visit ThatKimberly.com to sign up to be interviewed. And while you're there, pick a platform you prefer to listen to the podcast on, whether it's YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Google, SoundCloud, and now Amazon Alexa. And now we have that out of the way, I would like to welcome my guest today, Miss Loretta Veney. Hi, Loretta.
Hi, Kimberly.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Today's been a really good day, so.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and I appreciate you giving me your time and sharing your story with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, give the listeners a little background on who you are and what led you to do the work that you do today.
Sure. So I am a Washington, D.C. native. I was born and raised there, and so our family, we're fifth generation Washingtonians, and there are not too many of us around, so that's a pretty big deal in most areas. So the work I've been doing the last 4 years or so, a little more than that now, I have been speaking about dementia and, caregiving pretty much throughout the United States. And so basically what led me to this is my mom.
Good old mom.
Yes.
Doris.
That's her. And so she was diagnosed with dementia in 2006. So this is our 13th year.
Wow.
With this disease. And, like we say, I think, it's so great to still have her here. And so I spend a lot of time helping other families as well, get the most out of the day, because none of us like to see that blank stare. And so my mom just turned 90 in February.
Wow.
And
happy belated birthday.
Yes, and so she was diagnosed at age 77. So that was very worrisome for me, because my primary fear was that my mother would outlive my money. And I'm sure those of us caregivers out there knows exactly what that means. So
great statement. Outlive that money. Yes. Hence why I want to be talking about this disease, because we're living longer, and it's definitely possible for everyone to outlive their money.
Absolutely. It was a huge fear for, us. They live a long time in our family. My great-grandmother lived to be almost 107.
Wow.
So, yes.
Had you had conversations with your mom then about?
No, the only conversation we had, that is a great question. And the only conversation we had, it was almost a joke, except she made us sign a document that said that. And her wish was, we didn't talk about where you want to be or, how much money you have. However, her comment always was, I do not want to live with my children. And there were two of them. And she made a document, and she made us sign a document that said that. And the reason for it, I believe, was pretty simple for her. She lived with her parents. I was born in my grandparents' home, and she lived with her parents. She was basically a single mom for, pretty much my entire life, growing up. So for her, I think she saw it, if you were married, which of course I eventually was, that she would never want to interfere in a married couple's relationship by being that meddling mother-in-law and moving in. And so my sister and I used to joke about it, but then we found out she was serious, and she made us sign a document. And so one of the most interesting things about this journey for me is continuing to uphold my mother's wishes, because now she wouldn't know where you put her, but I would know.
Yeah.
So I have, worked very hard to, have her in a place, A, that's safe, but B, still, satisfies that wish for her. And so if you ask her, she'll tell you in a minute. I live alone, which she does not. She lives in a group home. But she would tell, and she has a roommate in this room that's, 2 feet big, but she swears she lives by herself. And they're very oblivious to each other, that's for sure. And so it's a single family home. It's wonderful. But I am just proud that I have been able to, honor that wish for her.
Yeah, that's huge. Good for her for making you sign the document, and for her to be aware and knowing that she didn't want this. My mother was adamant of me not coming home. I felt a lot of guilt the first year and a half, and she did not want me to come home. The doctor said not to move her to Dallas because I live in Dallas, she lives in El Paso. And so I just got over that guilt and we make it work. But she's still living in her own home, thank goodness.
That's fabulous.
But still, you don't know what you don't know. And good for your mom knowing that she didn't want you to do those things. And good for you for wanting to uphold her wishes. And even if it was just that one,
right.
that she can proudly say that she lives alone, even though she doesn't. Sorry, that makes me giggle.
It is hysterical.
Yeah.
Sure.
When did you discover that she had dementia, and was she fully diagnosed by a neurologist? Like, what was the event? I know it was back when she was 77, but like, was there a certain event, or was it build up, or?
It was just kind of a build up. She forgot to fill out the check correctly. She would leave off the signature or who it was to or whatever. So little things like that. And she kept saying she was just absent-minded. But the big clue for us was when in her non-assisted living building, they had all kinds of exercise classes, and her favorite was Tai Chi. Oh. She didn't miss Tai Chi for anything. If you would call her in the morning and say, "Hey, Mom, let's go to lunch." "Oh, no, it's Tai Chi day." Like, honey, it's not till 2:30 in the afternoon. We have plenty of time to do nothing. No, it might be traffic. And I guess in D.C., you can't blame her for that. Yeah. But in any case, called her one day from work, and I said, "Oh, how was Tai Chi today?" Because she would help the instructor put the chairs out, and for those of them that couldn't stand, and the little weights or whatever they would do before or after stretching, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so, she would always report on that. So I said, "Oh, how was Tai Chi?" And she was dead silent on the other end of the phone. Mm-hmm. And she said, "Oh, I was so busy, I guess I forgot to go." And I remember saying that to my sister, "Hey, Mom forgot to go to Tai Chi." And she said, "What was she doing?" And I said, "I have no idea." And that should have been a really big clue for us. And that kind of wasn't a home moment for me, but I didn't do anything right away. But one of the chapters in my book called It Was the Little Things at First. And so there was just a whole lot of little things.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they get to one big thing eventually. And I didn't take her to a neurologist right away. You needed a referral, at least around here.
Yeah.
And her general practitioner guy, he didn't have a clue. He said, I've known her for 20-some years, which he had, and I know she had dementia. Well, you see her once a year. What are you talking about? In any case, they did get a referral, and yes, they did just say, they didn't do a lot of testing, just all the questions that she couldn't answer. And so that was as much, especially back then, that was as much as they would do.
Yeah.
And so, she couldn't remember the season even then, which was, odd because she still dressed herself and all that. So that was interesting. But she couldn't put words to some of the things. And so he just said she was in the beginning stages of dementia. But I remember it like it was yesterday, and she was terrified, just, hearing the word. So that was the beginning for us.
So did they immediately put her on medication when that happened? What did the conversation look like?
That was a battle. Yeah, they wanted to put her on Aricept, and there's nothing wrong with her except this. So she only takes like one thyroid pill. We both have the same thyroid thing. So she took one thyroid pill, and that was it. So she didn't want to take anything else. So she said, "I don't want to take anything besides that." And so I said, "Well, you don't have to take it." And he was really rude and kind of obnoxious. He said, "Well, she does. Yes, she does. If you want her to remember who you are." And I was like, well, clearly she was very upset about it. She didn't want to take anything. And so finally she said, "Well, I'll try it." And I felt really bad for her. And then when we got outside, I said, don't let him force you into doing anything you don't have to do. There's no cure for this. It's going to stave it off maybe a little, but if that's not what you should do. And anyway, she had every Aricept side effect known to man. If it was in that little leaflet you get with the drug, she had it. Hallucinations, our dead relatives were chasing her. It was horrible. And then she took it for about 6 weeks. Then she had the ultimate side effect where it stopped her heart. And if I had not been with her, my mother would not be here today. And so she had every single side effect that they talk about in the leaflet. And that was the end of that. And I was relieved, just to be honest, because, you know, she clearly didn't want to. And even if that meant, you know, the disease would progress faster, that's what she wanted. And so I am adamant. My number one thing is we're going to do exactly what she wants to do, whether you agree with it or not. And I eventually fired that guy. So I got another neurologist I was much happier with. So, and I tell people that all the time. You know, you don't have to stay with these, you know, medical folks that you don't agree with. You know, I'll fire a person in a minute. Because this is my mother we're talking about. So
you can get a second opinion or do you go rogue. But they put my mom on Namenda.
Right.
And she's never been seen by a neurologist either, just because, like you said, you have to get a recommendation. But my mom loves her regular doctor, and he's, you know, for the most part, he's really good. You know, we monitor and stuff like that, but she's so physically healthy that he said that's the number one key. You know, no medicine's going to bring anybody's memory back. Exactly. I tried to change her diet. That doesn't really work. She's Latin, you know, just eats what she eats when she wants to. And especially with Mexican food, it's really hard, you know, to be more organic and all that stuff. But he said her continuing to go play tennis is what's going to keep her around. So, but I was definitely in a panic. What advice would you give to somebody who just became a caregiver?
My number one piece of advice is to be patient. It sounds crazy, but it is the number one skill that you need going forward with the whole repetition. What's today? What's today? What's today? Where we're going, where we're going, where we're going. And you need that. And, you know, along with the patience, you know, every day seems like a really long day when you first start. So I always say, just take one day at a time. Don't worry about what's going to happen next month or next year. Try to just stay, you know, in that one day. And what has gotten me through a lot of, you know, some really uncomfortable days would be to have no expectations. That's what I call my motto. I have it on my desk. I have it in my bedroom. And by having no expectations, what I mean by that is, you know, sometimes we have our, you know, expectations too high. Like, you know, you might make a reservation at their favorite restaurant and you spend all this money and you go and you get all dressed up and everything, and then they hate it. They don't remember it anymore. Why'd you bring me to this place or whatever? And, you know, you spent all this money, you thought it was going to go so well, and so you're so, you know, devastated when it doesn't go well. So I just approach every day like, okay, we're going to see what's going to happen. And that's how I approach it. And people tell me, wow, that's you know, I talk about this in my presentations, and people write that down, having no expectations. And people have written me to say, wow, that was the best advice you could have said. Because if it's a really bad day, I say, okay, well, tomorrow will be better. And if things went great, I just kind of go, yay. But going into stuff with no expectations, because that way you're never hurt. And especially when it involves other people, because just like we were talking about the neurologist, you know, you go in, you have your expectations about what's going to happen and not happen, and then it goes all haywire and everything. So sometimes other people can impact, you know, what goes on too. So you really can have expectations because, you know, you're not in control of so much of this disease. Yeah. And so that is a key thing. So be patient, take one day at a time, and have no expectations.
Yeah, letting go and letting God is what I
real
quick.
Ooh, that's for sure.
Yes, I had to not be attached to what she did or didn't do and how she did or didn't do it. I just had to let it go.
Right. So true.
It is, because you can, as the caregiver, drive yourself a little batty, you know, and taking care of yourself first so you can take care of your loved one is important. So
it is so important. And you can't survive this disease without that. So
absolutely. 100%.
Sure.
What's one thing you want people to know when it comes to dementia?
So kind of one big thing, and that is...
There might be a couple things, but...
every day is different. Mm-hmm. That's what I always love to say. And forgiveness really is key, because you mentioned it, you know, earlier, having a lot of guilt. You have to forgive yourself for all of these things that you can't get to, or you can't move right now, or you can't do all these things. So you have to forgive yourself, but even more, you have to forgive, you know, your loved one too. They may say something they don't mean, they hurt your feelings and all that. Forgiveness really is required, because you have to remember it's the disease and it's not them.
Yeah.
Because your parent would never have said that to you prior to this disease. And so, the forgiveness part, especially the guilt, you go to bed because you're so exhausted, but you say, oh, I didn't, get mom in the shower today. Okay, well, who's going to know besides you and her? And tomorrow's a new day, get her in the shower tomorrow. And so, things that you did that you probably shouldn't have done and things that you left undone. There are only 24 hours in a day. I don't care who you are. Mm-hmm. And so you still have to sleep as part of self-care, as you mentioned. And so, some things you do have to leave undone. And so, every day is different. And then forgiveness of yourself and your loved one. And that gets you through a lot of days.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's definitely something I learned after 2 years of beating myself up with a lot of things that I couldn't control. So,
absolutely.
And it's okay, you're becoming the parent. So I like to tell people that we come in as children and we go out as children when this disease occurs.
Sure do.
So what is something that surprised you from being a caregiver?
Yeah, so for me, it's really just how different your loved one becomes as the disease progresses. And what, I say to people all the time is that I love my mother every day, whoever she is, whoever she is that day. And, she's been other relatives or she's thought I've been other relatives. And so I try to go with that. But honestly, there are some blessings to that because sometimes the things that were sort of bad for them also can go away. So in my mother's case, for example, my mother had very high anxiety. So you would ride in the car with her, look out, oh, that person's coming on your lane. And, you going too fast, so slow down. Oh, my Lord. And so it was just crazy that now she doesn't remember any of that she had, anxiety and she didn't like riding in the car. Now she just sit and look around at the trees. So it's a beautiful thing. So I never expected that to go away. I actually thought her anxiety would ramp up. And it does in some cases. She does have the sundowning and all that. Mm-hmm. But there have been some things that have been left behind by this disease too. So, wow, she's really different. And so that's not all, it's not all bad. And, in terms of being different, you also have to weigh a lot of decisions. And so like when my sister died in 2011, my mother had forgotten, she still remembered me at that time, but she had forgotten she had 2 kids. So when my sister died, I chose not to tell her. So people were like, oh my God, what do you mean you didn't tell her? Listen here. What is she supposed to do with that information? Because that would be the one thing that she would remember, and then she would cry all the time. And then what would I do? So I just chose not to tell her. And same as when my husband died. I was very worried when my husband died because they were inseparable. My husband and my sister died on the same day, 5 years apart.
I'm sorry.
She has never once, it's next week too, July 17th. And she has never once asked for him, which is very interesting because he drove her everywhere. They did all this stuff together. But for him, one of the things that was interesting is, she remembered him even longer than she remembered me, which was interesting. And he was just devastated when the first time she didn't remember him. So all of those different things happen. But along the way, depending on who they are and where they are, that's when those difficult decisions become even more important because, so of course I didn't take her to my sister's funeral or my husband's, we just let that go. And there are all kinds of pictures of everybody on her dresser. She recognizes herself in the picture, but she never once asked. She will say sometimes, who are the rest of these people in my picture? That's what she'll say. She'll say, I look good in these pictures. Who are the rest of these people? Don't worry, sweetie. It's just us. Don't worry about us. And it's just hysterical. But, you have to be ready for that because they are very different as it progresses. But it also means in some respects, we have to treat them differently as well. Yeah. So that's one of the big surprises for most people.
Yeah, case by case. And good for you for doing what was going to cause both of you less stress. Both. Yes. I mean, because you didn't know which way she was going to go. And you erred on the side of, I don't want to make her sad. So, you know what I mean? My mom's brother passed away and she was determined to go to the funeral. So my brother took her because he lived in California. My grandmother didn't go, but she went and it gave my brother the experience of being with her for more than just 3 or 4 hours. So he was actually with her almost 2 to 3 day trip. And so he got to really experience, and because he was in that denial phase of, oh, mom can still drive herself, mom can still go to the store.
Oh,
Mom,
yeah.
no, she can't. And then when he took her on this trip, I feel like, there's a picture on her wall of her brother, but the only time she remembers that he's passed is when someone else brings it up. So she's
Correct.
not sad either way, because they
Right.
weren't that close. She went out of respect. She loved him. That's her brother, but she hadn't seen him, since their father had passed away.
Oh, I see.
4 years
Right.
prior. So, it worked out, but in the moment it was sad, and she did the right thing because she really wanted to be there because my grandmother couldn't go. So
Sure.
my brother and I, I got the plane ticket, my brother got the hotel, and they went, but it was just,
Wow.
it could have gone either way, but she went. I'm
Yeah.
glad she went, she was
Oh.
determined. So, but that's been like 2 years, maybe now 3 years. So it was a good lesson for my brother, for sure.
Yeah.
But,
never know how to see the pair, and it can be so difficult, traveling. And my mother didn't travel a lot of places anyway.
Yeah.
She kind of traveled vicariously through us. So yeah, at this point, I wouldn't take her anywhere. We had a really funny story, and but the other thing about being different is sometimes you underestimate what they can still comprehend, because I have an RV.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going to take my mom for a short ride. I needed gas for my next trip, so I had her with me. So I said, well, let me take her to get gas. So it was her first time riding it. She sat in it, and we've eaten in it. And so she's very familiar with it. We have little snacks and everything. So when I put the seatbelt on her and we were getting ready to drive off, her face she looked horrified. And I said, what's the matter? And she said, you can't drive off in your house. And you're like, wow, she gets that.
Yeah.
That when I'm not at home, I live in that.
Uh-huh.
And so she's like, wait a minute, you're not supposed to drive off, and you can't drive off in your house.
That's awesome. Yeah,
So,
they surprise,
yeah.
I get shocked all the time. All the time. What a chuckle that must have been, for sure.
Yes. Yes, she is so funny. So you got to laugh, too. That's the big thing about this disease. You really have to laugh.
Absolutely. Humor is one of the more that I laugh about stuff with her,
Yes.
or get her to laugh about, whether she's pissed off at me or not,
Right.
is really been helpful, and keeping positive, upbeat, whatever it is around, is very helpful as well, for
That's
them.
so true.
For sure. So tell the listeners a little bit how they can get a hold of you and buy your book as well.
Sure. So my easiest way to get a hold of me is on my website. It's pretty easy. It's my name, www.lorettaveney.com. So that's pretty easy. And it has information about the books on the website. So the book that is probably the most popular is The Being My Mom's Mom. What a title. That came right from her.
Thank
it
you,
was
Mom.
very much what you just mentioned, Being My Mom's Mom. Yeah, we were in a McDonald's, and she ordered an ice cream cone. The lady looked at me as if for permission. She had never been in McDonald's before dementia. But in any case, so the cashier looks at me like, is that all she wants, the ice cream cone? I said, well, you can have your ice cream cone, but you have to eat all your lunch first. And the lady burst into laughter. And my mother said to the cashier, I used to be her mom, and now she's mine. So there you have that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write that book. So there you have it. And then I also wrote an uplifting book for caregivers. It's a motivational book with photos, about 150 photos that my husband and I took all around the world, and I dedicated to him. He passed away, but I added motivational sayings to all of the pictures to try to sort of lift the caregivers up on their really bad days. And that one is called Refreshment for the Caregiver Spirit. And I call it refreshment because my mother's favorite word is refreshments. We'll go somewhere and she'll say, they have refreshments. So it's like her favorite, and she gets really excited about the refreshment. So I called it that. And then I try to always find something for my mom. And so I created a coloring book for her when she got all frustrated with the other coloring books because she could no longer stay and draw in those little lines. So I used Word to make a lot of geometric shapes. So I did some art with shapes, and she picked out the one she liked, and it became a coloring book called Colors from My Mind. There you go. And so that's the third book out this February. It came out right for her birthday. She turned 90, and so it was a great birthday present for her, and she loves it. And I call it an intergenerational coloring book because my granddaughter just turned 7, and she is now, of course, coloring inside the lines. But for a long time, she couldn't do that. So it works for ages at each end.
Yeah,
So it's
definitely. That's
very
awesome.
cool. So that's the way to get in touch with me.
And they can buy these books on Amazon, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
As well. And you're on LinkedIn, and if anybody has any questions about your speaking as well.
Yeah, they can give me that. And I'm on Facebook, Loretta Veney, and so my middle name as well. Yeah, so I use that middle name for my mom. So
awesome.
Maiden name, yes, indeed.
Well, thank you, Loretta. I really appreciate you joining me today and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And thank you to the listeners. If you know somebody who could use Loretta's story and or her books, share the podcast. And while you're there sharing, rate the podcast wherever you are listening, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, Google, SoundCloud, Amazon, Alexa. And to the caregivers listening, take care of yourself so you can continue to take care of others. And to all those who have not had that conversation with your family member about the what if something happens and they can no longer care for themselves, then what? Do you have a plan? And take from this daughter with a mother with dementia, 2 daughters with mothers with dementia. We wish we had that tough conversation. Tomorrow is promised to no one. Thank you again, Loretta.
Thank you.